$100 in the night, that type of thing. So just kind of going over my basic experience. I don't have any direct government experience, but I feel like all my experience relates over. About 2 years ago, when I found that it was harder and harder to compete in the retail world with monopolies and duopolies, basically the antitrust laws not being enforced, and basically all the tax breaks going to the super rich and corporate interests, and also the way that the corporate interests kind of bought off our government so that they get all the breaks. I found it tougher and tougher to compete and keep both my family supported as well as my employees paid the way I wanted to pay them. So a couple of years ago, when our current president got elected, I decided to shut down the business and try to get involved in politics. So after that, I worked on Jim Crary's campaign last time around, and he was running for the same seat. And so I just jumped in head first and was able to learn a lot about the ins and outs, make a lot of connections as far as the political world. And so here I am now running for this seat. And I feel like those things, all that experience uniquely qualifies me for this seat. A few of my main policy things before I let you guys all answer questions or ask questions. Medicare for all. I don't care what it's called. I think Medicare for all sometimes confuses certain people. Other people, they love the word or the term, but universal health care, my plan in the details would look virtually the same as Bernie Sanders' plan. My only difference is that I fund it a little differently. I tax nobody under $200,000. In other words, I wouldn't raise any taxes on any individual making under $200,000. I would instead raise the taxes on the people making over $200,000 to 1940s tax levels. And then I would also close loopholes for corporations that exist currently. My other big ones are the Green New Deal. I think, although that's not technically legislation, it's more of an outline. Everything in the Green New Deal, I've read it in detail, and that is the direction I'd like to go as far as creating jobs, creating equity for all our people, as well as saving our planet. Money out of politics is my third biggie, and basically I believe we need to get big money out of politics before we can really get all the other things that we want. I think that with the money in politics influencing everything, that's why we're kind of beating our heads against the wall and not getting all these things that the majority of the American public want. So that's my little summary, if I want to open up for questions from there.
Okie dokie. So if we're open up for questions, anybody that has a question, please raise your virtual hand. And I will recognize you. Okay, first up is Roger. Roger Sabadini, and Roger, you can go.
Yeah, hi Nick.
Hey, Roger.
I'd like to thank you for stepping up and entering the race, and I wish you all the success in what would amount to be a very tough race. So I'm going to ask you a question that I asked the last candidate we interviewed in this kind of forum, and so I could just directly compare your responses. So I think we all agree that we're living in a very partisan environment, contentious as it is. What would be the single piece of legislation that you would either introduce or otherwise support that you believe could garner bipartisan support moving forward in this contentious political environment?
Thanks, Roger. That's a good question. When you say one, I would have to pick probably infrastructure first, and I call it infrastructure, but you know, the Green New Deal incorporates a lot of that. But I think if we talk about roads and bridges and police and you know, emergency services and all that kind of thing, I think infrastructure is something that obviously creates jobs. For every $1 that we invest in infrastructure, it creates approximately $2 in growth in the economy. So I think if we talk about it in the terms of infrastructure, I would also incorporate everything in that infrastructure to be green and that in that direction. But I think if we talk about infrastructure, I think that unites everybody. Everybody wants a job. Everybody wants good infrastructure.
Yeah, that's an excellent answer. Thank you. I have other priorities, but I'm just was asking, and you answered it perfectly well. What would be a doable deal? Thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks for asking.
Okay, a quick question from the chat box was, before we go to the next person, which will be Betsy. You'll be up next. The question was that you had mentioned schooling, and the question is, what did you study and where did you study it?
Okay, so went to Crater High School. Actually, just backing up that far, I did some entrepreneurial classes in Crater High School and really found my interest in small business. So started there and then did attend a couple years at SOU in Ashland doing business courses. I didn't finish. I wanted to open up my own business and I was antsy. I did about 2 years there and took general educational courses, but mostly business economic courses, and then went and opened my own business.
Okay, great. Next up is Betsy Warner. You may go ahead, Betsy.
Hi.
Hi, Betsy.
I'm asking a question that's sort of like the nitty-gritty of how you're doing your campaign. So 2 questions. One is, have you been able to travel around among the different counties before everything got shut down? And second question is, have you been in touch with the Deschutes Democrats? I didn't see your information on the Deschutes Democrats website yet, so I'm just wondering if you have been able to be in touch with us.
Good question. I have, so I started about 3 weeks before the social distancing started. And so I had a schedule laid out. My first things on my schedule for those few weeks were kind of getting established and making my connections here in Jackson County. And then I branched out to Klamath County for about a week and did a lot there in Klamath County. Deschutes was on my list for the next, there was the forum that was scheduled there that was canceled, and I had a lot of meetings set up to meet with people there in Deschutes County. I was also going up to the Dalles and Hood River, and then later after that, after spring break week, I had planned to go to Eastern Oregon. So honestly, my campaign had just got started, and I had all this stuff on the schedule and wasn't able to do it. So basically in person, in the capacity of a candidate, only made it to Klamath Falls, Klamath County, and Jackson County. Everything else was on my list. So I've switched obviously to the cyber campaign, trying to grow my social media. I'm doing live town halls. I'm doing videos and commentaries pretty much daily. And so do more of this type of thing. As far as the Deschutes County Democrats, is that what you asked about?
Yes.
As far as Deschutes County Democrats, I have tried to contact all the county Democrats and honestly have had a hard time getting responses. So if there's a particular person or phone number that I can call, that would be great.
So it would be Jason, and you can get his contact information through the Deschutes Democrats website.
I believe I've sent him emails and phone calls and haven't heard back, but I will follow up on that right after the meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Next up is Gloria Olson. Welcome back, Gloria, and you're on.
Thank you, and thank you so much for being here and speaking with us. I have a couple of questions. First of all, we are going to be forever changed with this coronavirus and what is happening because of it. I'd be interested in some of your thoughts on that. One of the big issues that I think about is food, the food supply. And I really believe that we need to enhance and build the national conversation around food safety and food quality, and recognizing that many of these underlying conditions that we talk about in the coronavirus condition is diet related. I think we need to enhance and build into this government of ours a department for food, nutrition, and water. Water was brought up yesterday when I talked about this. Food is a great unifier, like music is a great unifier. And I truly believe that we deserve to have more of a conversation and more of a stake in the ground to say, we deserve quality food, like we deserve quality health care, because food affects our health and well-being. So I ask you the question, how do you view this in light of everything else? Yes, infrastructure and the environment and everything else fold into this. And so please, please consider and discuss to this point, how do we elevate the conversations and the legitimacy of having an accurate and research basis for our food supply. Thank you.
Thanks, Gloria. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think although we weren't getting everything we wanted when Obama was president, we were headed in that direction. I think, again, when an administration comes in and basically strips out all the science and strips out all of our infrastructure that we have within government to help research and find out what the best food sources are and what the best directions are to go as far as food and our health. When all that's stripped out, unfortunately, that's kind of the battle that we're in, and I see it as if we can get Democrats in control of our government, I feel like we'll head back in the direction of science and of research of health. I think Medicare for All, well, Medicare for All does have a lot of provisions in it to actually look at preventative measures for health, which I think ties into what you're talking about as far as how we eat in our health. And so I think Medicare for All would help in that direction as well, applying science and what we know about eating right and taking care of ourselves, mind, body, and soul, and preventing illness rather than trying to fix it on the back end. But I think we have agencies for that in the government, or we did, so we just need to strengthen those. And I think you're doing it, you're talking about it, and that's what it takes is anything. The government basically doesn't do anything unless enough people are talking about it. So I think you're talking about it, and I'll continue to talk about it, and I think that's how we elevate the conversation in that direction.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, so next up is Greg Peacock.
Mute myself there. Nick, good to see you online. My concern when I first looked at your website was that it was aspirational in the sense of all the old hits, and Jim Crary being one who was, in my mind, kind of notorious for that, in the sense that he didn't really see himself as winning, but just wanted to raise those issues because he thought they were important. I don't see that on your website. I'm absolutely pleased to see how grounded you are in terms of what you're talking about. And I think that one of the things that you're highlighting, and the last candidate we talked to did as well, is the importance of our own individuality. This is certainly a common theme for Oregon. And you're talking about being able to support people with an infrastructure and with jobs in such ways as to allow them to express themselves better as individuals and to lead lives that satisfy them. I want to go back to your business. I don't know anything about it, and you have abandoned it at this point for reasons that are not exactly clear, and yet at the same time, it's the foundation for your talking about small enterprise and distinguishing it from what else goes on with business. I'd like to hear you say more about that, because that brings your experience forward and maybe lays the foundation for some of the principles that that guide your campaign and make it special.
Sure, appreciate it. Yeah, my business was called ChatCat Wireless, and I was an AT&T wireless authorized retailer for almost 20 years. We sold cellular service. At the height, we had about 5 retail stores in Jackson and Josephine County. I had about 20 employees at its height. And it went very well the first 10 to 15 years, and was very profitable. And I was able to take care of my employees correctly and take care of the customer correctly. And as the big carriers, AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, all of them merged more and more and got larger and larger and got more and more established, they found they didn't need the little guys anymore. So they basically took all the commission out and basically kind of forced us all out, bought us all out. So that illustrated to me already where we were headed as a country, as far as when I talk about monopolies and duopolies, when there's 3 major cell phone carriers that control everything, and AT&T and Verizon copy each other every measure. We have antitrust laws on the books, but nobody uses them. Nobody enforces them. So that's one of the things that I am passionate about is getting control of the government and our economy back to the people, so that small businesses at least have they can compete. Because right now it's not fair competition. Right now, basically with monopolies, they can set the prices and they can just force everybody out, and they can afford to do it. So that's, I don't know if that answers your question in detail there, but that's what my business was. After I got rid of the AT&T part of my business, we went into repair, and always a big part of my business was selling cell phone accessories. And so we got rid of the AT&T part and continued to sell accessories and went into repair. The repair part of the business was pretty good, but it was tough to support 20 employees just on the repair part. The accessory part that had been 50% of our business or more was suffering when Amazon frankly got popular. People would come into the store, look around, and have us help them for a half hour or so, pick out a case, and then order it on their phone on their way out the door. So again, those are, I'm not trying to complain. I had a great time being in business for myself for 20 years, and I could have kept trudging along, but I just found that I wanted to take what I knew, what I saw happening to small businesses, and turn that into more of an activist role. And running for politics, running for government was the way I chose to do that.
So how would you support those small businesses? I have a friend who's got a pottery shop and sells in New Mexico, and he's struggling. And of course, with the coronavirus, that puts everyone at risk in small businesses. So what would you do to support small businesses so that they could thrive to an extent, maybe find their niche, maybe they're, in all this competition, but also to create a greater balance with them as they work in a community which is largely run by corporate interests?
Yeah, good question. I think there's a myriad of ways that we can incentivize small businesses. First thing I think we need to do is make a new small business category. Right now, I think it's any business under 500 employees is considered a small business, and that's just not applicable. Doesn't apply to what a real small business is versus a big business. So I think we need a new category for small businesses that is based on how much profit they're making, and under a certain amount of profit, I think those businesses we should help and incentivize, whether it's by helping them pay a minimum wage or a higher living wage, incentivize them to be able to do a myriad of different things in that direction. But I think also, I hate to go back to it, but I think allowing for true competition, small businesses will compete, if it's a fair playing field. So I think we have to make it a fair playing field. All the tax breaks are for the huge corporations. So if we take those tax breaks away from the huge corporations and give those tax breaks to the smaller businesses, then I think small businesses will flourish. People want to go to small businesses, but when all the tax breaks go to the big businesses, that means they can have the lower prices and so forth. Then it doesn't create a fair playing field. So I think that's how we have to do it: is incentivize small businesses, take all the, and frankly, we have to break up the big ones. We have to break up Facebook, Google, Amazon. They're all monopolies.
So how does this relate to agriculture as well?
So agriculture, again, sometimes we think it's farmers against, you know, city folk, but what it comes down to, in my opinion, from what I've seen and talking to folks in the district and my own experience, is it really is small farmer versus big farmer. It's the same issue, and all the big farmers again get all the tax breaks, and so that goes a long way if we can level that playing field a little bit. I think the small farmer will do a lot better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So next up will be Jerry Freilich, and then we'll take one of the questions from the chat box. So hang on. All right, Jerry, you're on.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Well, thanks, Nick, for joining us this morning. I am an environmental scientist. I've spent most of my career doing research with the National Park Service. I am interested to know your thoughts on climate change, and specifically how Oregon's forest industry relates to climate change and what you think about those topics. Thank you.
Thanks for asking. I'll give you my opinion on it. You're the expert, so I don't want to overstep that, but definitely I obviously believe that climate change is happening and that it's man-made, or at least contributing to it. And as far as answering your last question first, as far as the timber industry, I think that is intertwined both in the cause and the effect of climate change. And I have a timber plan, and I would love to work with you more and other experts more to fine tune that so it's scientifically sound. But from what I can tell about timber, I'll go back to a little story. When we had our 40 acres, we had 20 acres of timber. And when I was a kid and my family wanted to log it and get some of the wood from the timber. But they looked into it and they found that, you know, obviously clear cutting wasn't the way they wanted to go, but also found that doing it correctly made a huge difference in the health of our forests. And obviously we need healthy forests in order to have a healthy environment and to slow down climate change. So they actually hired logging horses and thinned the woods and was able to make a profit from the timber while actually improving the natural environment. So that's the tactic that I would take, and I think that's the same tactic also to lessen the forest fires that we're seeing, is to you know, properly maintain the forest. And I think that's a way we can create jobs also, is to create a whole forest to properly maintain the forest while harvesting selectively. Does that answer your question, Jerry? Would you have more to add?
I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
Gotta unmute myself. Okay, so the next question is in the chat box here. So the question is, assuming that Newt Buehler is the Republican nominee, how would you run your campaign against him? Where do you think he might be vulnerable?
Good question. If we talk from a political angle, obviously Newt has switched back and forth. When he was running for governor, he was trying to go as far left as possible, as far as he could possibly go. And now he's turned tail and gone the other direction and going full in on the Trump thing. So trying to figure out what Newt actually believes or represents or what he would do would be the number one thing. I've been following all the Republican candidates' Facebooks and commentaries, and been commenting on them on my Facebook. And so you can see a few there that I've written about Newt. So on specific issues, there'd be a whole list of them. Obviously he doesn't support the same things that I do. So, but I think his main weakness would be going after his consistency and the flip-flopping.
Okay, right now nobody else has their hand up, so I'm going to raise mine. If anybody has a question, please raise your hand in your participants panel. So Nick, I was going through the issues section on your website, and first of all, thank you for doing that, because too few candidates actually do something quite as comprehensive as that in hitting all of these issues. Naturally, not everybody's going to agree with everything that you put up there, and I was really curious about one particular position that you're taking there around just the structure of our government and how it functions. And in that section on your website, you said that you wanted to institute term limits in places where we don't have them. And so my question is twofold. One, are you talking about just at the national level, or are you talking in other places? And two, can you explain why it is that you believe that instituting term limits in places where they currently don't exist, why that is a good idea and what you would accomplish with that? Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, term limits is one of the areas that honestly I find that I kind of have a middle road on there. I don't want super short term limits, but I also don't think people should be in there forever for 40, 50 years. So I'm somewhere in the middle. Even a 20-year term limit, I think, would be better than unlimited. And the reason that I'm kind of in the middle there is because I feel like people do have to get in there and get the experience before they can really know how to operate the system and get things done. And they become experts on the government, and they become expert in their areas that they represent, whether it's environment or health or whatever committees that they're on. So I believe we have to give them enough time to get comfortable in their jobs and know their jobs and become experts. But the advantage of shortening the time is that they don't get just kind of comfortable and in there. We all know that human nature votes a lot on name recognition. And so if someone gets in there and they get name recognition, a lot of people that are just working their everyday lives and jobs don't have time to research all the details. And so those people just stay in there based off of name recognition, and also donors and so forth, which is another area that we could fix, is getting rid of the big money. That would help it. But term limits would allow new ideas to get in there. I think new ideas are always important, but it also would kind of shift out people who are just riding the coattails of their name recognition that may not be up with what's going on currently, or the needs of our country. And you asked about different regions and different smaller areas as far as term limits. Sure, I think every position should be looked at individually. I don't know that there's a one size fits all for it, but I think term limits all the way across the board of some sort would be a good idea.
Okay, thanks. Next up is Lisa Wilson.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead. Just talk.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Gordon Wilson. I'm Lisa's husband. I have been a lifelong Republican up until several months ago, and I switched to the Democratic Party. My wife has been a Democrat our entire marriage. I was raised Republican. All my family is Republican. So this is the problem that I have with Democrats. They're too kind. Republicans, the environment, it's a Chinese hoax, and they believe it. And you're going to be so happy, you're going to be so great, you're winning and blah, 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 blah. And the problem is we want to unite. We hear questions about, what are you going to do to unite us? When Republicans don't give a rip, So this is my problem with Democrats. They're way too kind. You're talking to people who don't care about the environment. They don't care about this. They just want their little piece of the pie, and to heck with everybody else. How are you going to talk to people with that mindset? What new perspective are you going to bring to these people who are living in their little tiny bubble and don't care about anybody else?
That's a good question. Very good question. I appreciate it because I get the question a lot, and I like the way you framed it. And I think it's a nuanced issue. It's a complicated issue. I think there are a certain percent of Republicans that it doesn't matter what I say. And I'm not trying to reach those people because it's not doable. I've spent my life, I enjoy the conversations, I enjoy back and forth, I enjoy debate, and I've spent hours going back and forth with these people, whether in person or on Facebook. And some of them aren't, that's what they believe. And whether we call it kind or mean or whatever we call it, that's their belief system. And they've created a whole world around that reinforces it. And there's no reaching a certain percentage of them. But there are reachable people that are still registered Republican or independent that we can reach. But my main objective would be motivating the non-voters, motivating the people on our side, and uniting what I would call our side, people who believe what I believe. Because right now, I think our biggest obstacle isn't necessarily the Republicans; it's ourselves. It's uniting amongst ourselves and being able to support people that maybe don't represent 100% of what we believe, but at least 90%. So I think we have to unite first our side, Democrats and progressives. And then secondly, I think we have to go over after that middle section of people who are still at least willing to listen. And every once in a while, you might accidentally reach one of those people that was over on the other side and found something. But again, if we talk about issues that are important to all of us, and motivate and educate, I think that's the key. Talk about infrastructure, talk about, Medicare for all. If we don't use the word Medicare for all, 70% of Americans like it. It's a lot of this is terminology and how we talk about it, but we talk about people's basic needs as far as infrastructure, medical care, and so forth. I think that's how we reach people. And I agree to one extent. I think, how can you be too kind? But if you're talking about being too kind and trying to placate Republicans, that some of the Republicans that are unreachable, I can agree with you on that. I think what I want to be is a tough, fair candidate. I'm not going to back away and shy away. I think a lot of times you're right. Democrats are too kind in their candidacy. I don't think that we have to lie or make anything up or call names. I don't believe we have to go there, but I think we can be a whole lot tougher in our presentations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to a question in the chat box from Connie. So the question is, did you support the Oregon Clean Energy Jobs Bill? And related, what would be your strategy to educate rural Oregon to understand that policies like CEJB/Green New Deal could actually benefit them?
Good question. I did support that bill. Again, I don't think it's perfect, but I think we have to support what we can get, and so I did support that bill. I'll go back to another story. My dad, I was raised on a farm. My dad was raised on a big farm. I was raised on a small farm. But I remember my dad, going down and reaching a little bit of soil when we were out working the garden and the vineyard, and he would rub it in his fingers, and he would sniff it, and he'd sometimes take a little taste of it and crumble it back down. And I just remember that because my dad was a farmer, and farmers care about the earth. They care about the environment. There's this idea out there that they don't. It's not that they don't, it's that they don't want to be left behind in the new economy that may, there may be some jobs lost or industries changed by moving forward with renewable energy and so forth. So I think we just have to make it really clear that we're not leaving them behind, and we don't talk about that enough. So any new jobs that are created in sustainable energy, any new jobs that are created in order to take care of our forests, I think people that are displaced from their jobs because of new technology should have first dibs at those jobs. We should have retraining for them. We talk about college and everything, and we should have that for the young, and we should have that for people, but we should also have that for people who have given their lifetimes to farming or logging or whatever they've done, and be able to get them into new jobs. So I think that's how we have to address it, is they do care about the earth. Again, not all of them, but there's a good percentage of them that do care about it, and we just have to make sure that we're not leaving them behind when we move on to the new economy.
Okay, great. Next up, we have Gloria Olson again with another question. Go ahead, Gloria.
Well, thank you. And Nick, I'm looking to the future, and I have to ask this question. Where are you going to find that deep pocket to, shall I say, get this message out there? Because I have been catching a little bit of Newt Bueller's messaging in the national space, and he's spending a lot of money. And if that's just the beginning, where is your money going to come from? Thank you.
Good question. The Republicans have a ton of money, not just Newt. I think there's 4 of them out of the 7 or more that are running that have hundreds of thousands of dollars already. You can go look and see, and they're funded by corporate interests mostly. My campaign is going to be funded on individual contributions, and in a district where the Democrat isn't expected to win, it's going to be tougher to get money. And in a district where the excitement was around Jamie and she still lost, and a lot of people invested a lot of time and money in her, it's going to be tough. So I'm out there spreading the word right now. My goal is to win the primary, and then everything kicks in from there as far as the funding and so forth. My particular plan is to win on a lot less money. How do I do that? I don't want to give away all my secrets, but social media. People are undervaluing social media. They're spending money on TV, and that's great, and everybody's seeing them, and everybody's calling me and messaging me and saying I'm seeing their television ad. I may do television ads too, but I can tell you that 80% of my money will go into social media. I will run on a lean team, as far as I'm not going to be wasting a bunch of money on I'll have staff, but on unneeded staff and a bloated staff. 80% of my money will go into online social media. And especially if the social distancing thing continues throughout the whole year here, which it could to some extent or another, social media and online outreach is going to be key to win the race. The whole beast changes over time, and a lot of people are still running on the old methods, mailers and things like that. Obama transformed things when he ran kind of on email, and it got into things early as far as email, and that's how he won. And I think we haven't really, other than Trump, seen a candidate really take advantage of social media. And I want to be a Democrat that takes advantage of social media in a positive way and wins that way. A television commercial that reaches a certain amount of people, let's say for $1 it reaches one person. On internet right now for $1 you can reach 100 people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks, Gloria. Next question, there's a question now from the chat box. This is another question from Greg. He asks, more important than passing aspirational legislation is building links with local areas to see that funds delivered are being used creatively in an accountable way. How do you see making those connections so you don't find yourself lost in Washington?
Good question. So I was going to make most of those, I have some of those connections, and I was going to make more of those connections traveling the district. Unfortunately, I have to make those connections this way now. But I'm already having conversations with people on the ground. When I went to Klamath, I spoke with the Klamath tribes, a lot of members. And you know what? Not just talking to the heads the mayors and the governors, and that's great, and that's all needed. But also talking to the people on the ground, talking to people who are just members of the Klamath tribe, talking to local farmers there in Klamath. So making those connections is important, and I think you just have to do it. You just have to reach out and talk to, whether it's the governors and the mayors, county commissioners, but also talk to the regular people.
Okay, great. No one else has their hand up, so I'm going to take advantage of that to ask you one more question. So a lot of people, you know, the 5 candidates in this primary race right now for the CD2 seat, most people don't know a whole lot about them, and we can do these things, which is great. And we can look at the websites and glean what we can. Although for a lot of people, they look more broad brush and they think, well, you know, how does this person align with my values, my views, the policies that I support? So and because people know about folks who are already in office or who have gotten a lot of exposure, perhaps it's instructive to ask you this, if you're willing to answer it, which is, if you had to, it's just two things. If you had to pick one of the candidates in the Democratic presidential primary with whom you believe you are most closely aligned, and 2, a current member of the U.S. House of Representatives with whom you are most closely aligned, who would those people be and why?
Good question. So I would say, well, the presidential is easier. I was thinking in my head on the other. The presidential is Elizabeth Warren. She's not a candidate anymore, but I believe, and I know no matter who I say, I'm gonna make a lot of people mad. But I think that when someone runs for office, you deserve to know what their opinions are. And so I'd love to, well, just to go into brief detail, I believe that her policies are very close to Bernie Sanders, but I believe she goes into more detail, and some of the funding areas, I like her plans a little bit better, and I believe she has a wider breadth of policies. And when it comes to systemic change about fixing our government and getting money out of politics, I think Bernie has some plans there, and symbolically, he has brought these issues to the forefront, so I give him tons of credit for that. But I believe that she basically just has more detail and a little bit more in the systemic change that we need, whereas Bernie's a little more economic. I believe she goes into the economic end as well as the systemic change that we need. Without her in the race, Bernie was my guy, was gonna vote for Bernie. I guess I still can. Biden was one of my last choices on my list, but definitely will be voting for Biden over Trump. And the Congress, AOC, just overall in the Congress, AOC, I think she nails it on every issue.
Great, thank you. That was very instructive for me anyway. So, by the way, I was also a Warren fan and AOC, so it was a good answer for me. Right now, nobody else has their hand up. There's nothing new in the chat box. So unless somebody goes down and raises their hand, I think we'll just ask Nick if he has any closing remarks or anything else he'd like us to know about him, and we'll call it a good hour. Nick?
Thank you. Well, thanks everybody for spending the time here. I'd just like to say that you can reach out to me in any capacity. Like I said, I can't meet you in person, I'd like to, but feel free to call or text me, 541-601-3738. Feel free to email me, nickheuertz@gmail.com, spelled just like my name, NICKHEUERTZ.com, or at gmail.com. And if you can follow me on my Facebook, really that's how I'm going to win. I'm going to be expanding to TikTok and Instagram. I'm already on Twitter, and I'm going to be expanding my social presence more and more. And eventually, when the budget's there after the primary, I'll be doing paid ads as well. So I'll pop up whether you're looking for me or not. But really, growing my social media base. People ask me all the time what they can do for me. Right now, they can't go knock doors, but you can like me on Facebook, follow me on Facebook. You can share my posts. You can comment on my posts. All that stuff helps. And it's not just visual, but it actually helps the algorithm so that I get out there and get the word out there. So if we want to do this on less money, if we want to show that a candidate can win without big money, without big oil, without, you know, NRA, if we want to show that we can do that, I need all your help. And I don't, if you want to send money, great, Act Blue, it's on my website, click on donate. The money helps too, because I can do paid ads. But if you can't do money right now, everybody's wondering what's going to happen with the economy, with the social distancing. And I get that. If you have time, just reach out to me on social media and spread the word. If you like what you see, if you don't like what you see, comment. Let's have a conversation on it. The more conversation we have on those threads, the more people will see it. So I won't belabor the point, but I really appreciate all you coming here and spending the time, and feel free to reach out to me. You can message me on Facebook also. However you want to reach out to me, I'd love to talk to you more.
Great. Thanks a lot, Nick. Appreciate it. Thank all of you for coming on and participating in this. I'll remind you that there is our next one is tomorrow at 11 o'clock with Chris Vaughn. We'll be sending out an email with a reminder and a link. Send that out this evening. Hope to see the rest of you tomorrow. Again, Nick, thank you. And this meeting is declared over. Bye all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You bet. Bye-bye.